stop. Put on your spirit ears. What's that noise? Well, that's the world taunting us to be complacent and to conform. Nah, we don't have to do that. We're Christians. We may be in this world, but we are not of this world. And our guest today is bringing to us a story and a heart of somebody that's been a really good friend of mine, Mr. Dan Simon. Dan, welcome to the show.
James, it is a pleasure. I think if there were a stronger word than pleasure, I would use that word, but for now, that'll have to do.
That'll have to do. So what we do is we honor our viewers' time. And so what's your salvation story, man?
Well, I have to start by saying you might be a little disappointed because my salvation story is not the type that you go to a men's retreat and share, and people are just like floored and crying and just all over the place because it's just such this incredible 180 of life. Um, I my salvation story is actually kind of boring, James. It's actually I was raised in a family by two Christian parents, 7 kids, attended church, went regularly, very much a household of faith. And pardon me. And in growing up, I found my own personal relationship with Christ. And in the process of sharing a story like this, I'll often, start the same way with, it's very boring. It's very disappointing. It's not a really great testimony. And I'll often get the response from people that'll say, actually, it's quite a testimony. Because having grown up, go through the teenage years and the college years and early professional years and later years, and now I'm married to an incredible woman for over 30 years, 6 children, 8th grandchild on the way, and remained faithful really through all of that is a salvation story, right? It's the ability to pass that on to the next generation and to stay firm no matter what the world has thrown out. Kind of keeping my eyes on the prize at all times. And so that's not a really eventful salvation story, but that's my story.
A lot of people would say things like that where and try to lessen the impact. But the true impact is a spiritual renewal. That's a miracle.
Yeah, no kidding, brother. I actually, I feel very strongly that was intended by God, right? For me to be able to have a story like that, because in organizations, in relationships, I get the opportunity to talk about, I have challenges like everybody else in my life, but I've never walked away from the faith. I pray that I don't have my Job moments, right? Where God tests me or allows me to be tested by stripping everything away that I love and that I hold dear. But so far, even in those tests and those challenges, I've been able to recognize that the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, and blessed be the name of the Lord. So
that's quite the perspective. You mentioned something about a men's retreat being associated with this.
Yeah. Well, so I'm very involved in men's ministry. I have been for quite some time. And so in a number of churches where I've been, we've always had, I've been part of the worship team and part of the leadership team for planning. There's always at every men's retreat, right, an opportunity to share testimonies. And so every time there is some testimony that just knocks you on your rear. Like you hear it, and you're like, that is incredible story. And then, you get to this place where you're like, I'm not telling mine. After that, like,
That'll be next guy.
Who can top that story, right? So mine is one of more consistency and maybe the distance, going the distance, but it is not a 180 transformation type of story, but it's my story. So
it's your story, and it is powerful because it is a miracle that God would send his son so that you and I could have life in our spirits and not just in our flesh. Our flesh is going to die and go away and turn dust back to dust, right? So you said You've been able to persevere. You've been strong through the storms.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your Ebenezer?
Hmm. Um, it's funny because I imagine there might be a lot of people out there who, as Christians, might actually be a little offended by by this. But
Mm,
um, I don't know. Several years ago, got my first tattoo, and it was, it was a scripture verse, around my arms, and it was just kind of a reminder and a public kind of show. But there was something that I felt like I wanted to have a reminder that was constantly in front of me, something that would
yeah.
just be a reminder that would say, this is the two most important things, in my walk, right? Or to, as God calls us, to love God and love people, right? And so for me,
Yeah.
it was about love God and love my wife, right? Those are the two things that I want to always be keeping in front of me. And so I have two finger tattoos on the inside of my index fingers. And the one on the left is Deuteronomy 6:5, with love the Lord your God, right? And then Ephesians 5:25, to love my wife as Christ loved the church. And that's that. So as a speaker, as not even Italian, but as somebody who uses my hands a lot when I speak, that's always in front of me, or
Yeah.
looking down, or raising my hand in worship, whatever it may be. I have that as a constant reminder. So for me, it's a permanent reminder. I'm never going to lose, like a stone
Mm.
or any other object. My fingers, God willing, will always be attached to me. So that's worked for me as a kind of, again, a continual visual to always have in front of me as a reminder.
Yep. And when the night that Jesus was betrayed, he called the disciples together and he said, we're going to have a little dinner here and I'm going to explain some things. And he gave us probably the greatest commandment, which is what this show is all about, sharing the miracle that Jesus shared with the disciples and how we, as just normal everyday guys and gals, remember God. And he said, this is the bread, this is my body, it's broken for you, eat this. And then he says, this is my blood, this is the wine, and drink this and do this in remembrance of me
Yes, so.
and what I've done. And that's what an Ebenezer is all about, is how you remember that. So, man, there has to be like a million times that you've looked at your fingers,
Exactly.
not when you're picking your nose, but there's probably
Yeah.
other times,
But
right?
biting my nails. I mean,
Or
that's
biting the nails.
it's out
Oh
all the
yeah,
time.
that too.
That's
Yeah.
my vice. That's the thing I do that I shouldn't do, for sure. But
What
yeah.
what comes to mind that, man, I'm so glad I did that?
Um, I think it's, again, I just think it's because I'm constantly in conversations and I'm constantly in motion, and so it's like, when, even if I don't want to, I mean, think about, I'm driving, right? Every time I'm driving, holding the steering wheel, I see them. So and I'll be quite honest with you, it has also been a really great conversation starter for others. How many times I can tell you that students, right, as I was teaching, or adults, I mean, I teach at a correctional center. So I've had both
Yeah.
the men and the women in the correctional centers ask me about them. And like anything else in this life, right? You ask me a question, I have a right to answer it, regardless of what context we're in. And so I may
Yeah.
not be preaching at you, but if you're going to ask me about my tattoos, I'm going to tell you about them, and I'm going to tell you what they mean. So in that sense, it's also been a great opportunity to open conversation with people. And it's led to some pretty deep conversations, and some painful conversations for some people about their faith journey that isn't the same experience as mine. But it's given me an opportunity to kind of talk about, the endless love of God, and the endless opportunity to come back if you've gone astray. And so in that sense, I don't think he's done using my fingers yet as a ministry tool. So
In a prison, in
mm-hmm.
a tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's unique.
Yeah.
That is unique. And that the way that those things happen is through the Holy Spirit speaking to us. But first and foremost, you must have had this just desire in your heart to constantly be reminded of God and his presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a true Ebenezer. Doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be a rock, like you said.
Right.
Could be, because you could lose that. And hopefully, if you're a woods workman or something like that, stay away from the saw, You mentioned something about when I'm driving. And the next thing that we usually entertain here during the show is culture. This world is a chaotic place. And we know that we're not of it, but we are living in it. And the Ebenezer's that we hold near and dear are not idols, but there's something that reminds us of God's presence and how we remember him. How might that have helped you in the culture?
Well, I guess that again, what I would say is I'm kind of always cognizant of God's presence as a result, and as a result of that, the people that are around me in any given context at any given time, right? I mean, in a sense, looking for the opportunity to be the hands and feet of Christ, right, on the earth. So, sometimes I'm a little more assertive, sometimes I'm a little more passive, but the opportunity to help someone in need, you use these hands that he's gifted me, to that work properly and function properly, to give, to serve, to share a word that is somebody needs to be picked up, or somebody needs encouragement. Oftentimes I'm using my fingers to send messages, and I'm often thinking about people that I know were struggling, or I'm thinking about people who I recently spoken to. They're going through something, and I'm just checking in, just asking them how they're
Yeah.
doing. And oftentimes that is enough for somebody to say, I am so glad that you checked in, and so good to know that somebody's thinking about me. So I think in that sense, it's always being mindful of love God, love people, right? And then God's going to put us to the test with that. He's going to put people in front of us that are unlovable, so that we can
Mm-hmm.
learn to be more like him and love them regardless, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
serve even when I have something more important that I need to do, or somewhere else that I've got to be. And so it's a struggle in this body, right? On this
Yeah.
earth to do that. But the constant reminder is where is it around me that I can do that? And
Yeah.
where is that opportunity that God's put in front of me to be that for someone that was in my path that I didn't see coming? But he did.
Yeah.
He always knew.
Yeah. He says he writes his law on the walls of our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And you've written two of his on your forefingers,
Another one wrapped around the biceps. So
and a couple of others that we're not going to show in the show because this is a G-rated show.
that's right. Of course, yes, understood. Completely covered. Okay. So.
Yeah. So God is always with us. It's our job to remember him. What would you challenge the audience today, or encourage the audience
Mm.
about what we've talked about?
Well, I think when we think about how we spend our days, right? Most of us spend our days at work, right? Depending on how old you are, right? Work could be school, right? You could be, if you're a teenager, young kid, or young adult, right? You're in college. School is your job. For the rest of us, work is how we put food on the table, right? And whether that's a career, whether it's a calling, whether it's a ministry, whether it's service, whatever that is. And so I think my challenge is, do you, audience, right? Do you view your work as an opportunity to worship the Lord? Do you see the people that you interact with every day? Do you see the work that you are called to do? Whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, whether you see the fruit immediately or you don't see the fruit at all, whether you get complete backlash and pushback from the work that you do and have to go back and do it again. Do you see all of those opportunities as a way to worship the Lord, to say, I'm grateful for the work that I have, the opportunity. I'm grateful for the chance to grow through this challenge, whatever it is. I'm grateful for the fruit that I see in the end in product or profit. And I'm grateful to be able to bring that home and share that with the people that I love. If we're not seeing work as an opportunity to worship, then I don't think that we're really maximizing what God is calling us to be. We feel like we can be so much more if we see the work that we're in the time that we're in, right? The Esther moment, right? He's called me to for a time such as this. If I'm not really seeing my work that way, then I don't know that God is ready to fully use us to our potential. And so that's my challenge, is to ask anybody, and I'm happy to have that conversation with anybody that's listening. You know, what does that look like? What does work as worship look like? And so I have some, you know, one of my talks that I do, I have some things to think about, some things that you can do differently to actually be very focused on using and utilizing work as an opportunity to worship the Lord. So that would be my challenge.
That's a definite Ebenezer that you're teaching. It's a means of remembrance. Do all that you do as unto the Lord, as you're working for him, not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here, people. You heard it here. So, Dan, you mentioned about contacting you. How would the folks in the audience get a hold of you?
Well, I tried to make it, I guess, pretty easy. Created a website for my work that is dansimonsolutions.com. If you go there, there's a contact me, but my email also is pretty straightforward. It's dan@dansimonsolutions.com. And I'm happy to have conversations about various ways that I've using my 35 plus years of career to bless others in leadership and organizations and just individuals, to just share where I believe God has me at this point, using my Esther moment to bless those that I have the opportunity to come in contact with. So I am happy to respond to anyone that reaches out with a question. Happy to have a consultation about what you're trying to do in your life that will bring you closer to the Lord and give you more opportunity to display your love for him in the work that you do. So happy to answer anybody who's willing to reach out.
dansimonsolutions.com. And man, Dan, I just can't thank you enough for being here and joining us to share with people a story of salvation and your Ebenezer, and talk a little bit about this world and how different it is than the one that God has intended for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for you out there, rely on your Ebenezer. Find one. And do this in remembrance of him, because he cares for you. See you next time.